Firstly, it's a pleasure to be invited to Manchester Trades Union Council. It's a pleasure to be invited to a Trades Council. It might not be one of the recognised fringe meetings, but it should be one of the recognised fringe meetings of the Labour Party. But it just goes to show how distant the Labour Party has become from the trade unions. And I think it's pretty endemic that in the last 12 months, the trade union movement has obviously been cut asunder by the Labour Party through the Collins report. But I think hopefully this week what we're going to hear is some progressive policies in relation to what the next Labour government is going to actually embark on if it actually gets elected in 2015. And part of that should be the repeal of the anti-trade union legislation. Because the trade union legislation that's been put in place is the reason why we now live in a society where people's living standards are driving them to food banks. It's the reason why we've got homelessness. It's the reason why we've got 0 hours contracts. Let's be under no misunderstanding. The reason why our society is broken is because of the anti-trade union legislation. It was the anti-trade union legislation that made sure that the bosses have the power in the workplace and we've got little or no little influence on what they do or what they take away from us. So let's try and make it clear to the Labour Party. If you want to stand with the working class, if you want to represent the working class, you better get alongside us and stand with us and repeal the anti-trade union legislation. Because it's absolutely abhorrent in the 6th richest economy in the world that we have people relying on food banks. It shouldn't happen. And I'll tell you what as well about the trade union movement. Because unfortunately we've been hoodwinked and blindfolded to actually what's happening in our society. And I tell you, instead of marching against the cuts, and saying we're going to defend the public sector, what we should have done is we said we're going to march against the bankers and we want to jail the bastards who robbed us of our funds and make sure that they pay the price instead of the working people that's having to pay it now. Why should the disabled, why should the sick have to suffer because they took all the money? Because they shouldn't. They shouldn't have to pay the price. And I tell you what, we want a Labour government that's going to repeal all that legislation and stop the war on the sick and the poor in this country. We can't have a society where it's right to scapegoat people just because they're poor, sick or disabled. So let's make the Labour Party understand. If it wants to stand with the working class, it has to look after the vulnerable in our society too. Let's also make it clear to the Labour Party, the same as we make it clear to any politician in this country. We're not going to wait for you any longer. We're not going to wait for politicians, with the honourable exception of John, we're not going to wait for politicians any longer to make the right decisions. And we're going to take this to the streets, every single street across this country, and demand the change that we deserve as a society. Demand the change that we deserve as a class of people. The right to a minimum wage that enables us to live with dignity. And that fee is £10 an hour for every single worker. No worker that less than £10 an hour. Every single worker deserves to be able, as a human right, to live at home and look after their family with dignity. And let's make another one as well. The Labour Party needs to understand we don't want reform of 0 hour contracts, we want them abolishing. So let's make that clear. That's what we expect from a Labour government. And the other thing we expect, we wouldn't expect inequality or accept inequality anywhere. So why on earth do we think it's okay that young people have to work alongside other people just because they're 16 or 17 and get paid less money? Let's abolish the youth. If you're working alongside somebody, it's not right to be treated differently. So let's make it clear. We want a repeal of the anti-trade union legislation, the abolition of 0 hour contracts, the abolition of the youth rate and a £10 minimum wage. And once the Labour Party delivers that, then they can claim to represent our class and the Labour movement. But until they do, let's make it also clear as well, the Collins report gave people an opportunity. It gave people an opportunity. And it gave trade unions an opportunity too. The Collins report said, as an individual member, you will get an individual voice within the Labour Party. Well, if the Labour Party doesn't want us, if the Labour Party doesn't think we're needed, if the Labour Party doesn't think we're necessary, then the Labour Party will find that the trade union movement walks away from it And what we'll do is set up another trade union party that represents the interests of the working class. We want a party that represents us. And it's about time that they started representing us, because we deserve it. Yeah. We deserve it. And let's be clear, when we stand together, we can achieve so much. When we stand together, you think of our achievements. When the Labour Party has represented the interest of the trade union movement, when it's represented the interests of the working class, when it's come and said, we're going to work together, what did we do? We ended inequality. We gave men the right to vote. We gave women the right to vote. We created the National Health Service. We created the welfare state. We said it's wrong that people should be left to live in poverty. We said we're going to build houses, so we built council houses. We created a society of full employment, because that's what socialism stood for. It doesn't defend the rights to people to be sacked. It defends the right for people, if they're able to do so, to go to work. That's what we want from our Labour Party. The policies that created the welfare state, that made sure that people no longer had to live in poverty. And I hear a lot about the 1970s, and I know if Bob was here, he'd say the 1970s were a great time for the working class. It meant they could aspire, and he was right. And he was also right about organising. If you're going to organise in your workplace, make sure you organise and strengthen your workplace. Don't organise and give in, organise to win. And if you organise to win, one thing's for certain, the whole Labour movement, like they did at Hovis, will come behind you. Stand up for the right things. Stand up for what those people did in Wigan. Those people in Wigan that went out and said, we are not going to allow our people who live in our community to be treated as second-class citizens. We're going to go out and strike for people who are on 0 hours contracts. We're going to go out and say it's not right that agency workers get paid less than us. We're going to go out and strike until the company recognises no second-class workers here, no second-class workers anywhere. And when they went out on strike, despite the fact that the company said they weren't going to win, 2 weeks, the Labour movement, every part of our Labour movement coming together to make sure of a victory. No more 0 hour contracts in Hovis, in Wigan, no more agency on less pay, because I'll tell you what, when you strike and you stand together and you fight together, you will absolutely win together. Repeal the anti-trade union legislation, stand together, fight for what we need, fight for what's right, solidarity.